Rita Salvado from the Wool Museum in Covilhã, Felipe Temudo Barata from UNESCO Cátedra for the Preservation of Intangible Heritage, Nicole McBride from Atlas Loom, and Valentina Pilia will be joining us from Flores Textile Studio a little later. So we'll introduce our projects and then we'll go into a roundtable discussion. I'm Fatima Durkee from Passa Ao Futuro, and we're working in Portugal to document and activate the artisan sector. So I wanted to just start the conversation today with a quote. I grew up in New Mexico, and this is from the Diné, the Navajo Indians. Spider woman represented wisdom and education. She provided the first people with the skills they needed to survive, such as planting crops and weaving. The spider, so closely associated with the goddess, is a symbol of the ability to weave and to create something from one's own body, just like a spider makes silk. Young weavers are instructed to find a spider web in the early morning, glistening with sunlight and sparkles. They are told to place the palm of their right hand upon the spider's webbing without destroying or damaging the web. At that moment, Spider Woman's gift of weaving enters the young weaver's spirit, where it lives forever. So since we're going to be speaking about textiles, I wanted to honor all of the ancient weavers and all of the ancestor weavers, and ask that their wisdom come through in our decisions and in where we're going with our work today. So Felipe, I'll turn over to you so you can introduce your projects.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon to the persons and people that are listening to us. I was the founder of a UNESCO chair, in fact, that is dedicated to intangible heritage and the safeguarding of intangible heritage. So sometimes in the middle of my way, I met the textile industry. What I want to introduce today is the two projects, different things I have done, because I need to say that I work especially in the Mediterranean area. And one thing it's very easy to realize is how the mainstream of everything erase this traditional how from each corner too. The first project I want to present is the project of this woman that you can see there, called Teresa Branquinho. She's perhaps one of the most exceptional weaver I met in my life. And this was a project that that I have organized. And my question was very easy. It's just to answer one question. How can a person like this one can survive with this work with dignity? Not to be rich, but to survive with dignity. So I just need to resume this, but the important thing was, there was, of course, any business plan. She sells usually in the popular markets around the place where she used to live. She has no design support. So as she has no design support, she only knows how to produce in the ancient, in the traditional way. Of course, about selling, she doesn't know how to sell. And when I push her, because she knows to work with in the web, and I suggest for her to work in the end of the day, she look at me and she tell, this is very unfair you are asking to me, is to sell my products after working 12 hours during the day, I still need to work 3 more. And of course, the final one is that she has no financial capacity for investing nowhere else. And the interesting part is the sad conclusion of the project. I wrote a lot of this about this, and the sad conclusion about this situation is, in each 100 weavers like this, no matter if they are just at the beginning of the profession, no matter if are in the end of the profession, perhaps I can save 4 in each 100. This is the sad part of the thing. But the second project happened in a quite different way. These 10 beautiful women I met them in Morocco. I must say now, because I'm old, so I'm a little bit of a part of this terrible but beautiful event and beautiful project. These women are coming from the pink, the one is pink is from Iraq, the yellow, the lady that is in the yellow side, in the right side in yellow, she coming from the Republic of Congo. She take 5 years to arrive to Morocco. And these incredible women doing textile work. These women, they belong to a cooperative called Migrants du Monde, Migrants of the World. The beautiful part is in the foundation that I belong, that support these women, and we are dealing with refugees and we are dealing with migrants. We organize a cooperative, and what do we provide them? First, we provide them management support. Then we provide them design support. Then we provide them formation. Then we provide them a place. Then we provide them, especially, there is hope in their work. And what yes, please do. Okay, this is what they produce. They have a catalog of what they do. They have parades of this they are doing. The business, they have a business plan. They have financial support, and they can survive because they have external support of what they are doing. This is the difference between when the weaver, this exceptional weaver Teresa Berquinho works, and the different when there are support that we provide, the foundation, not we. The foundation provide to these exceptional, they are also exceptional women that I show you before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll let Nicole. Nicole's going to produce.
Hi, everyone. I am Nicole McBride, and I am the founder of Atlas Loom. So just a little bit about what Atlas Loom is. It is a startup that is marrying textile waste and artisanal methods and preservation for the handicraft sector. So to continue, just to tell you a little bit, so here's our impact program that we're going to be developing. But let me just actually backtrack for a second and tell you a little bit about my background. So I've worked 16 years in the fashion industry in New York City, and I worked at Christian Dior, I worked at Holt Renfrew, which is a large department store in Canada, and I worked most recently at Amazon, starting up the fashion space at Amazon. So my background has been in product and marketing. So very, very, very grateful for this experience to work in corporate America, if you will. It was an amazing educational experience. But one thing about corporate America is I really feel that you end up leading with your mind and then also a bit of more of your, I don't know, what is it, your solar plexus chakra, if anyone's into the chakras. It's more of the ego center. And so I was missing something from the heart, something from my passion, just something that really spoke to me. And I think that was something that was really missing in my life. So I decided I was going to take a little sabbatical. I took a year break and went and traveled the world so I could find like what is it that is like really my calling and what do I feel really engaged with. So I went around to Morocco, I went to India, came to Portugal many times, Spain, Mexico, and at the end of it, really like two things really stood out, and that was people and planet, and people from the sense of like I absolutely fell in love with handicraft and artisan, beautiful, just it to me just touched my soul because we were like looking at our heritage, we were looking at like our birth, where we come from, and there's just something so special about it. So handicraft to me just really touched me, and then also the planet, because I've worked in fashion for a number of years, and I've seen the cycles of fashion and how we continually are, you know, a long time ago we'd have 2 collections a year. It was fall and it was spring, and then that turned to 4 collections and then 5 collections and 6 collections and then 1 million collections, and then there was no collections in sight, and you're just constantly producing, and there wasn't a lot of thought into the aftermath of what would happen. So that was something I was conscious of. And so I remember watching these women who in Morocco, actually, and they were weaving these really beautiful rugs that were made from textile waste. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's incredible. Like, instead of throwing it away or it's just something we don't think about, we're actually creating a new purpose for it. And so that was really special to me. So this is the impact vision of an impact program for the future that I've really been speaking to Fatima about, and I'm excited for the future of. And that's really bridging the gap between fashion's textile waste and just textile waste in general and artisan preservation, and thinking of really creative ways in which we can marry the two. So our aim is to bring the world beautiful product and better systems that protect people and planet. So next slide. So I'm going to give you just kind of a high-level overview of both textile waste and then decline of artisans. So I'll try to do this fast, and then marry the two. So just an idea, why is the production of garments so taxing on the environment? Well, first, 60% of our clothing is made up of a microfiber. And what's a microfiber? A microfiber is made of petroleum. And these are actually invisible particles that every time you wash it, you don't see it, you don't realize it, but it goes into our water stream. It goes into our soil, our water stream, the food we eat, the water we drink, and into our oceans. So that's one aspect of it. Second is, if 20% of all industrial water pollution comes from the textiles, the making of the textiles, all the water that's consumed, and then the actual dyes. And, you know, just as an alarming statistic, 47% ends up never reaching the customer. When you think about the spinning of the yarn, when you think about the cutting floor fabric, so that's the making of the garment, what ends up on the floor. When you think about the pre-production fabric, so all of the rolls of fabric that don't get used because they were canceled. When it comes to sampling, when it comes to garments that didn't really quite work, all of that is alarming 47% that never actually reach the customer. And then also, just so you're aware of, every second there's one truck load full of clothing that is burned or dumped every second. So what's the end result of all this? So, you know, this has been a huge problem for the past 5 years that I think that people are really coming awake of, is that we've talked so much about, you know, greenhouse emissions and energy and this and that, but that's also a huge problem. But textiles collectively, throughout all the different processes of textiles, is the second largest polluter in the world. And of that, only 15% will be recycled globally. And in the end, about 85% of textiles go into a landfill every year, which is the size of the Sydney Harbor. So just to give you some context of how big this is. Okay. And on top of that, garment production has doubled since 2000. A lot of that has to do with fast fashion, and continually we keep buying and buying and buying more clothing. So kind of asking, so why is only 15% recycled? Like, what is the reason behind this? So a lot of this has to do with the fact that it's actually quite difficult to recycle clothing and fabrics. And why is that? Well, synthetics, the microfibers, they they melt during the recycling process, so it makes it very difficult. Not to mention that every time you do through recycling process, it shortens the fiber. So when you shorten the fiber, it actually becomes weaker. And then the waste collection and sorting system is a little bit catastrophic and difficult. And like I said, post-consumer waste is difficult to recycle, as I was mentioning. But there is some good news. In 2025, textile waste will be mandatory and be part of consumer recycling bins. And there's some breaking ground technology out there, some called New Cycle and Recover, that work with post-consumer waste recycling. And there's a number of others. So there's a lot of ground being broke at the time, but there's still quite not enough to manage all of the waste problem. So this is just a quote. It's important to know just how big the textile market is. If all the chemical recycling technologies out there were fully scaled and had 10 major factories, we'd still never touch elbows to elbows how significant the size of the total addressable market is. So every recycling, upcycling, downcycling idea is welcome to the table. So a brief overview of the decline of artisan handicraft, which I think this table knows very much about. So why is the decline of the artisan handicraft? Well, a lot of it has to do with the introduction of cheap products that led to, the villages not being able to sell their goods because there was cheaper goods that were being replicated and copied. Also, it tends to be that artisans have been unpaid in the value chain. And so if they can get out of the process of being an artisan, then they will choose a different path. In my research and what I did in Morocco, I found that a lot of the women were making 19 cents an hour. And so if they had a choice to not be an artisan, they would choose not to be an artisan. Also is that there is a degree, trend sell. That's the bottom line. I've worked in retail my whole life. And so having more access to being able to take the artisanal ideas and then tailor it for a modern market, they don't have as much access to that. And then also, if you're going to be an artisan and make your own brand and go for it, the cost of the raw material goods can be quite costly. Another thing to note, though, is that in the world of trend, which I have spent a huge part of my career in, is that artisan-inspired trends continue to increase. And so the word boho, we've heard it so many different times, but what are some boho elements? It's like patchwork, tie-dye, macrame, all kinds of embroidery and things like this, and that's weaving. These are all artisanal techniques, and overall, the boho trend has increased by 350% since 2018. Yeah. So that's a big increase. This trend isn't going away. And then Portugal, and just to note, has a great history in macrame, weaving, and embroidery, which I absolutely love. Also to note is, the runway is always inspired by the past, and there has been a history of this. But, there's a way to be able to bring what designers want to bring to the table and have an artisan have a seat at the table, so that we're able to collaborate instead of just taking the ideas from the past and then, refurbishing it on the runway. This is an exact example of a Portuguese handbag and then Carolina Herrera version. The Carolina Herrera version sold for about 600 euros, and the artisanal bag sold for about 120 euros, and it's quite similar. Another thing to note is that there is a customer demand and supply problem. So the global handicraft sector is expected to increase, yet there is a decline in artisans. So solution to this is that how do we collect the dots between the things that cannot be recycled, because it's complicated. When you have a lot of different mixed fibers, it becomes more complicated recycling, and preservation for artisans. So how can we link the two together? So next slide. So idea is to really think about things in terms of potentially upcycling. And what is upcycling? Upcycling is essentially taking something that doesn't go through the entire recycling process and finding a new use for it. So this has actually been a legacy of artisans for so long. I was talking about the rag rugs and tapestries and other things that have been developed. And just one thing to note is that prior to the Industrial Revolution, like the idea of trash was almost non-existent, because every household sort of was an artisan. They, fixed and repaired their own clothing. They took old pieces and they made gorgeous blankets out of it. They did patchwork. There were all kinds of things that they did to just make sure that they were not trashing. There wasn't trash. And so what would be the magic? I think we're going to talk more about this, so I can let it to be that. But my thoughts are, is great partnerships with the suppliers and brands. We need those partnerships for donations, better systems of being able to partner with the waste collection systems, creative workshops so we can have collaborative cultural sharing, and also some mentorship in terms of, how to sell your goods, how to market your goods, those modern, design and trends.
Perfect.
Yep, and lots of market opportunity. And that's kind of the close for it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Amazing. Great. Okay, so I'm going to briefly introduce Rita or Flores. Okay. So I'll just briefly introduce Flores because Valentina had her son was ill and she'll be here shortly. So Flores Textile Studio is a new textile studio in Lisbon that is working with artisans all over Portugal and also artisans in other countries. So these are examples of some of the work they're doing, and they're targeting the industrial design sector and architecture sector. And the way they began was actually contacting the different artisans and starting to get samples of their work and collect. You can go a little bit slower, sorry. Start here, we can stop there at that one. They start to collect samples of the work of the different artisans and show them in their shop so that people can come and make their own custom pieces, and also so that they can make custom pieces for their clients. So in a way, they started to become kind of a material library of textiles in Lisbon. We can go to the next slide. So you can see here where they're starting to put the different patterns together. Slide. Going, and the idea was really that we don't, as if you go to an artisan in Portugal, oftentimes they don't actually have samples of all of their work. They don't know how long something's going to take until they try it out. And we are facing this day to day with the artisans. So something that this is bringing to the table is how can we collectively start to help the artisans market themselves better and make it easier to make orders with them, and also make it easier for us to work with them, not necessarily being in situ. So Valentina will be here shortly, and she will speak more. But here you can see, for example, the rich culture of textiles here in Portugal that they've been collecting. Okay, and now if Rita could please present. Sorry, I didn't know how long their slides were. Rita, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful, welcome. We can hear you.
Thank you, and I am here at Covilhã and joining you. And it is important because I am talking to you about this identity of City Factory. So talking to you from here, it's part of the experience I want to share with you. So maybe I just present myself very shortly. So I am a textile engineer. I am a professor at the textile department of the University of Evora. So I have been engaged in the textile engineering education, and then I was committed in the fashion design education, and recently I have been involved in directing. I have the honor of being directing the Wool Museum. It is the museum because it is a museum of the university, and I will later on present to you because it's one of the big projects I want to present to you. Indeed, the big project I have is to create synergy between these different approaches: textile engineering, design, and now museology. And this has been really very challenging for me. So you are seeing pictures from our collection at the museum. These were pictures that Fatima took when she visited us. And you see, these are draws from fabrics, like these samples you are seeing now. They belong to our textile collection. It's a very significant textile collection, and this is a work from our educative system in our textile atelier, textile lab, where we made several workshops and activities based on the learning of the techniques. So, and now maybe can I show you, because there is something I want to talk to you about the difference about techniques and technologies. And that is something that we can very well understand just visiting the Wool Museum. Maybe, we cannot see the other images, I think. No. Okay. So just, because just to, the Wool Museum has several poles. And the first pole is located at the Royal Textile Factory, and the exhibition is focused on the manufacturing. So all the operations were made manually. And that Royal Textile Factory was a very important decision in Portugal in the 18th century that the Marquis of Pombal made to support the industry that was growing, and that because Covilhã was well known at that moment already for being a big producer of fabrics, of wovens. And our first pole, it's located in a building that is classified, historically classified. It's a monument. And the second pole of the museum is located in also an historical building, but focus the ambience of the factory. So these two environments, the manufacturing textile, that is the pre-industrialization period, and then the industrialization and the ambience of the factory, it is a very interesting experience to understand the differences between techniques and technologies, because the techniques can be the same, but technologies have been evolving, and so we tell this story at the museum. And indeed, a big objective and challenge I have is indeed to involve the several communities to make this learning about techniques and technologies, and to inspire based on the interpretation of this, to bring novelty to their actions, to their works, and to their projects. And we have at the museum organized, a very well organized textile collection, and we and the database of several digitalized samples is available. And we have the textile samples, we have the drawings to make the industrial products, and we have the industrial technical guidelines to produce it. And we have safeguards and collect this from several companies that were producing in the last century and that are now closed. But you know, this knowledge and the textile industry is still a very dynamic and important industry and economic developer of the city. So right now, textiles are still the products that are exported the most in the region. And also, and I want to conclude this, the museum is a museum of the university. The university is strongly committed to the safeguard of the industrial heritage. The collection at the museum of the university is very diverse. Several industrial buildings, so all the campus or the majority of the campus are based in historical buildings that are requalified, and that is really very amazing. We were celebrating today, indeed, the European Academic Heritage Day, and UBI is a very singular and is a very good example on that. But just to tell you, the collection we have, so includes buildings, but includes also textiles, documents, all the documentation from the associations of the industrials, Grêmio dos Lanifícios dos Industriais da Covilhã, Grêmio dos Industriais de Gouveia, and sorry to speak in Portuguese, but so we have several documents, textiles, machines, equipments, and we are in the heart of the campus of the academy, and still our big challenge is to involve these different communities, involve the workers of the factories to share their knowledge, involve the academy to inspire on our collections and study them, to involve the citizens from the city, to involve all the people, very numerous people who are interested on learning textile techniques. And this is challenging us because this is a problem of really communication. We have this amazing textile collection, and the interpretation requires some technical knowledge. So if we want to communicate with designers in order to bring them to us, to our museum, and to use our collections, we have to communicate in a specific way. If we want to communicate with art crafters, we have to organize workshops, then connect with our archives. So we have to communicate in a different way. If we want to communicate with citizens, with the consumers who we wish to value our heritage, our knowledge, we have to invest on education. And all this is really a very big challenge. It's challenging us on the way to communicate with these different communities, because we believe that to be really sustainable, it's a question of involve everyone and involve all these communities, involve art crafters, but involve also the people who will buy, who will use the products, and who will value the materials and the products we have. Okay, and I think it's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
So much, Rita. That's really beautifully said, and actually it's a good headway into our discussion, because the way that you have been able to document the textiles in Covilhã, given that they came from a kind of an industrial setting where the different factories, although they have closed, they had very good documentation of their textiles, I think is exactly what we are, given Nicole and Flores and Passa Ao Futuro, all looking for in terms of the artisan textiles, the artisanal textiles. So we think it's very interesting to be able to see the success that you were able to achieve and the methodologies that you achieved, and to think together how we can implement those kind of methodologies when we're working with small artisan communities or just one artisan. And so it's kind of a scientific approach that we need to take in order to be able to support the artisans into moving into the future, because without having this information, it's hard to valorize it in a substantial way that then will enable the younger generation to keep on with the crafts. But at the same time, we need to document it so that even if the aging population is still aging, we're able to train a younger generation through this documentation. So I don't know, Nicole, if you would like to talk about that at all, just because you have been looking for artisan communities here in Portugal, and maybe the challenges you've been facing and kind of also the opportunities that you see.
Sure. I would say, yeah, there's definitely a big challenge in terms of there's not enough artisans, so there's definitely a decline in it. But Portugal is so rich in handicraft and its legacy that, you know, with all the work you're doing, it's just like we can't see it decline. So I found in the process that there's there's two versions. So I think there are I call it the artist. So there's the artist of Portugal that makes beautiful pieces and knows how to market and sell their work. And then oftentimes will sell on Etsy or through Portugal Manuel, and there's other outlets that they sell. I call them more the artist. But then there are the peoples in the villages that have had this craft for centuries and passed on and on and on, and somehow they're kind of a little bit missing out of the value chain. Mm-hmm. So from my opinion, one way to be able to do that is to be able to link some of the artists and the artisans in these villages and be able to create programs where there could be cultural sharing. I think there's a lot of cultural sharing and education that needs to take place, but that's one thing that's definitely has come up in my research and travels. Mm-hmm. That there's a big gap between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how can we create this education, and how can we make these linkages for markets that already exist, that are more small scale, or, you know, not targeting huge markets where we don't have enough artisans to do the production.
Artisan. Right.
But we can do smaller markets where it becomes accessible and it's not too stressful for them. And then from there, we can start to attract younger generations, and then we can go into bigger markets.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a big step that we all need to take together moving into next year.
Yeah, I'd say the fashion industry, if you said, hey, why don't you partner at this point? I think if you said partner with artisans, they say, hey, great. But then there's not the production manpower to your point. And so it's just creating this special space where we can have partnerships, where we can develop the next generation, have the more production capacity so that we can create larger partnerships for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, when Valentina comes, where it's interesting, because working, and also with you, because working in the interior design market, or working instead of textiles for fashion, looking at textile for product, where even, for example, a rug can sell more than a blanket, and you can take traditional rug weaving, blanket weaving techniques, and you can make rugs out of them and sell them for more, which gives the artisan more money, which enables them to pay for another person to help them. And so it's also rethinking where the techniques are going to be used. And also in the case of Rita, it's like seeing, okay, we have all these incredible patterns that did come out of Portugal in an industrial level, but how could those be taken maybe into a handmade piece? So using the research that you have and all of the books that you have of patterns, and how we can kind of start to blend the two worlds. How do you think that? What do you think about that, Rita?
I think it will be really, it's an opportunity still that we have to explore, because the industrial technological process, the textile industrial technological process is very long. And all these phases, in all these phases, the material has some potential to be worked and to be the raw material to transform and to mix with other textiles in different stages of the technological process, in order to mix and to create, to bring novelty on that. So I think knowing well the manual techniques and trying to explore the technological, the technologies is challenging. And indeed, you know, I think what the weavers and the drawers were making at Covilhã, producing the fabrics, so the wovens, right now it's very close to what I see my students doing with 3D printing. So with a regular machine, they experiment this and this, and at the end they produced some results that are unique. Just exploring the technology and the technique. So I think mixing both, it's really interesting and full of ideas to explore.
Let me say something about that. Okay. Look, my first this attempt I'm going to do is the first one, just in a very general way. Okay. After listen, everybody, I think there are three things, interesting things here that we are not discussing it, but we are using it. The first thing is time. Time. It's very interesting because do you know how much a weaver needs to do a blanket in wool? 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 weeks means she has no more, 3 weeks, perhaps usually 4, but nevertheless, 3 weeks. She must go to the field to collect the plants. She must wash the wool. She must dry the wool. She must do to put in the loom. She must put all the things to prepare to do the work, and she must do it. Okay. And she's alone. In the end of the 3 weeks, she will sell the blanket. She will sell the blanket in the market in Portugal for 300 euros. With that, she will be not only poor all the time of his life, but in the end of the day, she will die.
But that's exactly why we're saying.
But, okay, so this is the first thing that I want to talk about, the time. Why it happened nowadays? Because it's much more complicated. This profession was much more used in the small villages, in small towns, because the towns of the 80s were small. When they come to the city, they need much more time. They lose 2 hours in traveling, the mobility. They need to do the things for the food for the family and so on. So in the city, this is much more difficult to do so. So they have less time. This is why I talk about time. The second thing I appreciate very much Nicole's presentation, because she called our attention for another thing. It is about the waste. We are producing for the waste. In the resume is what we are doing. But moreover, this is not fair, because when I travel in the Mediterranean, that I think I know a little bit, it is not the waste of the north side of the Mediterranean is much bigger than the waste of the south. So it is not fair for trying to look at the things as it is the same. No, it is not the same. No, they have not the same money to buy in the south and in the north. So the waste in the south, it's much less, it's much smaller than the waste in the north. And when we speak like this, it seems that we are doing the same. No, we are not. So the second thing for me is how fair we are doing analyzing this problem. The third thing is the general ideas. The third thing is the question of how to provide support. And to provide support is the key issue from my point of view, because what I think it is interesting, structural TCBL, is this is a kind of conglomerate where you can find big industries, and there it could be some help, because perhaps we can find out a platform we can meet all of us, in the sense that the people that work alone can use these services, should I say like this, of the big companies, but the new designs, the new markets and so on could be explored by the big industries looking at the smallers. So this is a question of structure, seems to me. So time, how fair we are talking about these things, and these conglomerates and cooperation, how we can manage. This is my first note, but general one. Okay?
Yeah. And I think they all support each other, because I think that in terms of time, we need to give value to that time.
Yeah.
And we give value to that time in terms of what objects are produced. So if we can give value to the objects that are produced, so that instead of making 300 for 3 weeks of work, she's actually making 1,500 or 2,000 or 20,000 for 3 weeks of work, that's going to start to change the time. It's going to give value to her work. And then we can also give support. So we're giving design support in that way. And then also we can start to give network support and technology support. And I think that there's technology support in terms of being able to connect to the team. So how do we globally connect to somebody who's 80 years old in a little village? We need to start having younger generation people there who are able to do that connection. You know, I mean, even us working with artisans who are in their 50s and 60s, sometimes it's really difficult because, okay, they'll use WhatsApp, but they don't know how to send a photo and they don't want to look at their phone. And so we need to start to have the kind of a on-ground team of younger generations who are working with these older artisans in order to connect them to the support that then is, I think it needs to really be designed specifically per community, because different communities need different type of support. Don't you think, Felipe? No, you think they all need the same support?
Sorry. Why I'm saying that? I'm sorry. I don't want to monopolize this.
You're not.
Look, my question is this. Okay, if I talk about the beautiful, the wishful thinking of the world I want, I am with you. Mm-hmm. The problem is, in the program Habitat of the United Nations, they say that in 2040, the population, 70% of the population will be in the big cities. And there will be 100, and I don't know, many mega cities, cities with more than 10 million. So the truth is, we are losing population in the rural areas where many of these people are. And we are growing our cities. So my question is about the support. There is two things. The first thing is how to try to address the problem and to tackle the problem in the cities and in rural areas. This is the first thing I think it is important, because you don't need to imagine or to wish, because the reality is like this. And I just don't want to change the whole world. For me, it was enough. Now, for this meeting, it was enough just to address this problem. It is structures in the rural side, countryside. It is not the same than in the, and they should have. We should have both.
We should have both. Absolutely.
This is the first thing I'd like very much to say. The other thing is this cooperation. Perhaps I have not expressed myself very well, but I think the problem is, if I have a blanket that costs you 1,500, a lady from Madrid come here and I say, look, this is made by Teresa Branquinho. Of course you don't sell this. The only way to sell is this is the support structure where some institution guarantee that this quality and this important thing. So this is why I think things like the TCBL are so important. It is the possibility to add value to this woman that deserve to sell this for 1,500. This is the interesting part, and this is why I think it's different the things that it is made in the city and in the countryside. I come yesterday from a place called Salvado de los Barros. It is a ceramic small spot in Spain. They are in the middle of the mountain, but they survive. Why? Because the region of Extremadura say this is the good place to buy ceramics. They have this support I'm talking about, and they are in the middle of nowhere. Okay? Yes, please do. Yeah.
I'm a person who throws ideas out there and see what sticks. So
great.
it take it or leave it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to circle back, Fatima, to your idea of like, okay, so how can we connect the young generation to the older generation? And I was talking about how a lot of the textile artists, they actually do know how to market their goods. They happen to be younger. But one thing that I noticed in working with them is that it's harder for them to scale too, because they need ateliers, they need manpower. So they end up really, really backed up, and it's really challenging to book their time because they have like really, really tiny teams. And I know that they are like all very keen to support their country. They're very keen to also scale their businesses. And it just makes me think that potentially, there's a lot of amazing textile artists in Portugal, a lot, that maybe there could be a collaboration between textile artists and like looking at like, all right, how do you want to scale? Let's talk about this. And then how could we connect them to the artisans nearby of Portugal? So that's one thought that came to me. I specifically work with, for a little while, Vanessa, I'm going to say her last name wrong, Baragão. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, my Portuguese is not very good. But she works specifically in upcycled, beautiful tapestries. And so she gets donations from mills up in near the Porto region. And she is always developing gorgeous pieces, but her schedule is very, very booked. And so it's just, that was one idea that kind of popped up to me, to connect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important, and also connecting communities. So when we're interviewing artisans, we ask them, I mean, this happened for Flores. They were working with this incredible linen weaver, and then she got ill, and then there was nobody to fill the orders. So it's always like, who do you have that you can call to work with? Do you have a support network of people in your community? Do you work with other women or other weavers? Yeah. And then trying to nourish that in a way and say, okay, great. So you are the master artisan, and you have your atelier that you're working with, and you have people that you call in to work with you, and they're able to also become masters. And so there's this kind of continuity that starts to happen through supporting the team as a whole and celebrating the team as a whole. That's really important. So the community, the rural community, the network of community with connecting with designers or with makers, and a lot of time younger generation makers. And I think that's the work that we really need to do as a group in Portugal as a whole, as a network, and see how we can develop initiatives and develop programs that actually support these communities of artisans. But then again, where's the funding coming from? How are we going to be funding them doing their work? And I think that's where, again, it comes in with the new designs, So if they have a few key pieces that they can make that enable them to be supported so that we can start doing the initiatives during and alongside the actual support coming in, it's so important.
Agreed. And I also really like your idea, how you were talking about like being really strategic about what categories and how to focus on it, because when we're talking about blankets versus rugs, it's true, it's a very similar technique, but a blanket, can sell for, I don't know, depending on the blanket, but upwards of maybe $400 US, 400, upwards of that. And that's a very, very luxurious blanket, but a rug can sell for thousands. So the margin makes a lot more sense. So being strategic about focus.
Exactly. And how do we do that, and what do we need to change? And a lot of that can also come from the research for example, Rita and the university and your studies of, you know all the different wools that come from Portugal, and so connecting kind of the designers with you and also understanding the different sheep, the different wools, the different processes that the wool can go through, because maybe one pattern that's traditionally used for a blanket, if you use a different wool, it'll be stronger and then it can be a rug. And so sort of connecting all of our knowledge base is really important, and how we can do that. And then that goes into the digital. So you've been digitalizing your archive, and how can we digitalize? We're starting to work on this with Felipe on this CreativewearPLUS project in Alentejo, where we're digitalizing different techniques in Alentejo. But how can we create kind of a shared network of all of this information so that it can be cross-referenced and used as inspiration, but also used as a resource for innovation, you know? So I think that that's something that we're also trying to tackle in this coming year that will be helpful for all of us. In terms of waste.
No, can I say something about the previous?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, it is interesting what you say. Of course, I agree because I participated in the project, of course. But let me say something, because there is very interesting experience around the world. The first thing is how to convince groups of young people to go to these communities. How to enlarge the market of people that are interested in the traditional know-how. There is very interesting experience about that. I work in many cases before. There is in Romania, but the last one I worked with, it was in Brazil, Fortaleza. It was a city up in the north. They have a very easy, if you want, cheap, if you want, but interesting strategy to do this. What they have? They have what they call the Book of Masters in the city hall. Okay, the Book of Masters is something that they open call, in this case for textiles in the sectors, and the communities present their own experts. Okay, and when they present their own expert, the experts that are present, they should vote a master of them. And he goes to the Book of Masters. They are approved in the city hall, and he has. The first thing he has, of course, is a social prestige about this. The second thing is every week he must go to a school. Every week he must go to a school explaining what he's doing. And he receives a small amount of money for traveling in the city. You cannot imagine how interesting this kind of event can push people be interested about what they are doing in this sector, what they are doing in the other. And of course, because the social prestige of this, even the young, in this case, people that they are working in weavers, they are interested to be one day to be the masters. I mean, this is important because we are dealing with the reality of our societies. And this is why it's so interesting, this kind of experience. There is a lot of them. I just tell the one of them, but with different profiles of suggest it is very interesting strategy that it is possible to develop. This is what
that was actually going to be one of my questions, like which strategies you've seen in your work and in your travels that you think could be implemented in this rich ecosystem of textiles in Portugal, that we could come together. I mean, the idea of the masters and the Book of the Masters and education and getting into schools is super. Okay.
Now let me just tell you a small story. Because I'm working in Cape Verde also, as you know, I work in a lot of places. In Cape Verde, there was the opposite thing. It happened. In Cape Verde, they do the textile called pano de terra. It is the name of the thing. And the women usually do this, and they were quite used to be belts. But with to belts that the young people use this as a kind of fashion. The problem is, and was, that belts were used anymore in the jeans. They abandoned the use of belts with this
elastic.
and so they are almost disappearing. Huh? How linked are the product and the fashion and the recognition of the importance of the thing? Huh?
I just had my brain goes on like brainstorming rants, so excuse me. So I was just thinking about this archive, this gorgeous archive of all the textiles with the history and legacy of Portugal, and then you thought it said a platform, and then I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. And this is the reason why I think it's such a great idea is, well, one of many, but my experience working in fashion is when you work with a designer, before they design any new collection, they go on inspiration trips and they take pieces of like the textiles, pieces of, you know, whatever it is from around the world that helps them really like think of their journey for the next collection. So that's very, very common. But, you know, with the given dynamic of the world and just like budget cuts across the board for travel and like how things have shifted, everything is moving to more of like a digital place, but people still need inspiration and designers still need inspiration. So it'd be really cool if you had a platform where designers could be inspired by these archives and are able to maybe, you know, you can send them a little package so they can touch and feel it, but having that inspiration and that journey is part of it. And then also that could be a way like a donation platform as well, like the subscription and a donation to help fund some of these efforts to like keep the heritage alive.
Perfect. And you know, we can add to that, which is,
your idea.
what we can add to that is what you're saying. So if there's something that is disappearing because of something else, we can highlight it. So we say, wait, we need urgent attention to this technique. We need to do something with it right away. And so, yeah.
This is really a brainstorm.
Yeah, this is a brainstorm. No, this was the idea of bringing us all here was to brainstorm and think of solutions that we can collaborate on actually in Portugal for these coming years, and because we all know that action has to be taken now, and so we're all working in this sector. So the idea was to bring us together to brainstorm.
May I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to go back again to this keyword of time, because I think, I don't know, are you listening to me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, because it's such a different approach in art crafting and in industry to time that I think just being together, we can learn and inspire a lot in each other's. And I was listening, Felipe and you, and I was thinking really taking a look with the experience and the art crafter eye, taking a look on the technological process, we understand that the heterogeneity, some irregularities that some industrial products have are planned to produce something at the end that is closer to the manufactured one, but cheaper, produced in a really faster way. And now we are in a new period. Now we are facing with time with a new approach, all of us, after this experience. We value time, and all society, I think the work, being at the work, even if it is at the manual loom or if it is at the factory, right now, the work is the value. It's not to build something to the future. We want to use it, to use the time right now in the present. And this is very, very strong in our lives nowadays. So I just go back again to say, I think that these two communities, if they are together looking for a master, I think they can inspire a lot each other, because they have knowledge that they share, but they have really different perspectives and approaches that can help a lot both sides. So I really think the museums also are a good place to give support on that sense to the art crafters, for instance, because indeed visiting a museum, it seems that maybe they are machines but the people who can have ideas are really the people who understand the techniques and understand what those technologies are main to. So I think this cooperation and I think looking to really the industrial approach and for the contents that are already available, for instance, at industrial museums, may be a powerful learning tool.
We'll come visit you soon. Because I think absolutely, just from the standpoint of documentation and then also the standpoint of which technologies can be helpful without taking over completely the handmade. You know, like some of the weavers that we work with, they don't want to do anything with a machine at all. They don't even want to do the carding of the wool with a machine. So of course then the pieces take hundreds of hours more than if we could at least do the carding of the wool by machine. So it's also how can we introduce some parts of the process to be done, okay, even if hopefully they're going to be solar powered carding machines in some of the villages so that people can go and card their wool. You know, that's going to lessen the amount of time that they have to spend. Okay, I totally understand spinning by hand, but then you can also have, you know, you can have levels of a design that are made with the craftspeople. So you can say, okay, this one is semi-industrial and this one is completely by hand. So that's also a way for us to do that. Valentina, welcome. Yeah, good to see you. Welcome. So I think that's also something for us to think about in terms of giving markets to the pieces, but also its education for the consumer and also for the artisan. And that's something that we can learn from the industry, because the industry, it was kind of, they took over almost everything by machine, and now we need to kind of scale back, but we can see where we can introduce machinery, right? Or I mean, with the recycling fabric, are you using any machines to, yeah, so you do have to, I mean, to rip the textiles and...
Yeah, you have to use, honestly, technology to go through the process of working with anything. If you're doing with mixed fibers, or if you're dealing with post-consumer, you need technology to go the spinning process. So I think they kind of need to go hand in hand at some point. Yeah. But I do think if you're talking about 100% hand woven, eventually I think that will get to a place where that is just going to be a total luxury market. Mm-hmm. Like it shouldn't be something where a woman spends 3 weeks in her house and sells it for $300, you know. It should be the luxury market.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's by us exposing the whole process and kind of celebrating the whole process, you know. So I think that there's technology on kind of the digital level, on the machine level, and then also in terms of the documentation level with filming. You know, so how can we film the whole process of the textile to give the actual end piece value? Welcome, Valentina. So this is Valentina from Flores Textile Studio. Thank you. And we're so happy you're here. I gave a very bad brief introduction on your work, but I didn't realize that the slides were ending. So maybe you want to give a brief introduction and then join in.
Yes. So thanks for inviting me. And I live there, right?
Yeah, or to us.
No, so we're trying to work with Portuguese craftsmen a lot, and we're specialized on textiles. And yeah, Fatima explained that we sourced a lot of weavers around Portugal, and so we're trying. This is for interiors, luxury interiors, most. It's not the only aim, but that's the way it happened, because because the time of doing things and the process is very, very long, and so it just the prices are also quite. Yes, high.
So how would you think, because right now we're talking about the digital and technology world, how it can help the craftsmen, the craftswomen, and help the weavers and help the textile artisans. So in your experience with your consumers, so it would help to have do you think storytelling would help for them to understand the process more, or what do you think would help in order to give more value to the pieces, the just value they deserve?
I think for the consumers, yes, we want to also do this for them to understand more and more the whole process behind it, because, for example, we have these walls that we propose. And it's really from the sheep to the fabric, and it's a very long process. The weaver, she spins, she weaves, she hand dyes, and yes, if we could show the consumers the whole process, I think it would help a lot for them to understand the whole time it's there is behind the product.
Absolutely.
But then on the other side, for the producer, for the artisan, I think we also need to help them to be a little bit more with technology and help them understand who is on the other side, and so to be able to respond sometimes faster. But I think we were talking about that.
Yeah, and in terms of, and I'll give it right to you, Nicole, in terms of, because you've been doing an incredible work of collecting samples from the different artisans, and so what has your experience been with that? And a lot of times they don't have samples, and
yes,
so you
they
have
don't really understand what is a sample used for, and but we explain more and more that a client can't just pick up a rug on a picture, or we need to have samples, and then sometimes we really work from the sample. We work on a new sample before ordering a bigger piece,
We were talking about doing a digital platform of all the samples, and that would be helpful for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nicole, did you want to say something?
And then very quick. I just, when you were talking about that, it's like, how do you value goods? And one thing that I think consumers have missed but are getting exposed to is like the value chain has been very hidden. The entire process of garment production, and how a huge portion of the world, it's actually modern day slavery in a lot of parts, and this is the cost of our clothing. More education for our customers and more awareness, the more aware they are, and then education in how it's made by the handicraft sector, more of that, I think, definitely creates value. So it's marketing and education.
May I say something? Thank you very much, Nicole. Because I like very much the Nicole some minutes ago say about a weaver that works 3 weeks in the blanket and just sell it it's a luxury product. And so the question that seems to me very interesting is, which is the role as a museum such like this? Because of course we cannot lose the technology here, and the digital, of course we cannot lose it. The interesting part is how you gather the weavers, in this case, and how the weavers can use the technology there. This is the interesting part. The first thing I must say, as far as I know, the weavers I know in this process, they are smart. Yeah, they are not dumb. It is important to say that, because they are really smart people. They know very well their own limits. They know very well if they are together, they are stronger because they have more time. They can do some split of the work. And of course, they understand very well if they have a structure such as the museum, they can use it. And they, for instance, in the design, where they can inspire themselves alone, working alone in they cannot. And they know very well the role of a museum in this case. Of course, perhaps they have some formation, if you want, some training about that, some practices to do this. This is why I think it is important. And then they could have more time. And for me, because one of the things I know very well in Cyprus, the ladies that do the embroidery, they have no time. Don't neither. So the question is to add more time to their work. When they have more time, and they only can have more time when they gather something themselves, perhaps, with the institutions such as a museum like this one. Okay?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, look, it is interesting because I have, I realize it is interesting because it's also my personal story. When my Teresa Branquinho that I present, I told her the first week, I told her, do something to dress, okay? And she do something. And she give it to me, and I went to my students, to the students, women, because it was something for a woman to wear. And I asked my student, do you want to buy this? And she looked at me and she said, Professor, it looked like old already. And I told her, of course, there is no design here that push them to like this. So I take a course of the master students of the design, and I told it, now you design me to her. Of course, it is more complicated than we think. Why? Because the students of the design, they don't know the specificities of the textile they work with. So they mix things because they don't know the type of textile.
People who,
of course. This is why this is important in the museum. Because they can provide and explain, and they know they have the examples of design possibilities and so on, and they understand that.
So that's important also for the information that we're gathering from the artisans is also the constraints within the designs, you know?
And they are aware of it.
They are aware, but then it's hard. Sometimes you ask them and it's not clear, but then you sit down and take some time and it says, okay, this pattern can be done on the same loom with the same threading as this pattern, but these patterns have to be separate. And so also understanding this interchange of patterns, which is, I mean, the museum has some amazing textile drawings
and they have
explaining that.
There. They have a role there.
Yeah. So that's also an important thing. And then we were talking about solutions that we've seen in other countries or in our travels that we think could be interesting in Portugal. Do you have any?
Solution?
Yeah, or initiatives that you saw working with artisans in other countries.
$1 million question.
No, I should have thought about this before, a solution like this. No, but I think the work you do is already amazing to help these people, going on. And for example, now what we could do is we have a lot of old weavers, and we're trying. Sometimes we also propose them to invest in bigger looms because they all work with small looms, and we need to be able to propose pieces which can go internationally, like rugs and. we need bigger looms. So if we had help on investing and having bigger looms, and then trying to have the young generation to keep going on this direction, and it's not something that is from the past, but it's everything. It's a whole process of also re-evaluating the history, the patrimoine of Portugal, and to show how valuable it is, and so that young people can have the desire to continue on this direction.
Yeah,
because for now there's a lot of artisans we work with that are after them. There's nobody, and they have kids, but the kids are not interested.
Yeah.
So that's.
And the interesting thing about weaving is there are so many people who, for example, they were working in tech or they were working in business, and they just want to get off the computer and they want to go into weaving or they want to go into clay. And so I've been asked before, but who is this younger generation? Who are they? And okay, maybe they're not 20-year-olds, maybe they're 40-year-olds, but even, they're ready to change their life. And there is a peace that comes, that's the quote that I read from the beginning, like there's a peace that comes from weaving. And it is such a beautiful, beautiful art form, and it's a mathematics, and there's so much richness there that maybe, it's not about trying to attract people who are unemployed or just out of school or who failed school, but instead trying to attract these people who want a life change, who can value this art and carry it on with this value and this honor,
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. We also work with people who do linen, who cultivate linen. And so at the beginning, they're more agricultural people. And then the lady started developing this. And so now the whole family is on this thing. And I think it's, yes.
Yeah, so that's the idea of the farm to textile or plant to textile, which there's so many people going into permaculture and going into biodynamic farming, and weaving just fits perfectly with that. So it's also trying to find, like, how do we attract those people to these little villages? And those are people who want to be in rural settings, So it's kind of just a matter of, we have 5 years to do this, if that. So how can we do it on a mega scale all over Portugal, But I think that the platform and having the knowledge out there and collecting the information and also going around and documenting is a huge part that has to be done immediately, for sure. Yeah. You want to say something?
No. I don't want to say to identify the exact, because I know some experiences where, very well-known designers, they use the work of the weavers, in this case in Italy, and I don't like what I'm seeing there.
In Romania it happened, in Peru
so
it happened.
They are exploiting the weavers in a very, very ugly way. So when we speak about, we must take care about the things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the practical terms, they are,
But so this is a protection that needs to come in.
Yeah.
And how do we, it's, I don't want to be like, how do we protect them, or how do we, but how do we take into consideration in this exploration and in this celebration protection and fair trade and IP? It is intellectual property. Nicole's mind is tick, tick, tick.
Mine is like tick, 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 tick. It's always doing that. And again, they may be terrible ideas, but something that came to mind is that there's so many beautiful ecological hotels around Portugal that tend to be in where the artisans sort of live. It's quite common because people are looking to go and just retreat and get into nature and be a little bit like disconnected from cities. So it's quite common. Then I started thinking about like my background in retail, and like a lot of traditional retail is dead, but what is thriving is experiential retail. So having an experience with your retail process. So I don't know if there's a way, because it's like hard to have artisans go all the way up to cities and, you know, do these things. But if you're talking like ecological hotels, it's nearby and they have gift shops and experiences, maybe you can create some kind of like synergistic experience where they can create handmade goods, like, you know, made to order. I don't know, just throwing ideas out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hotels and the hotels in Portugal, it's a huge opportunity because they're popping up like mushrooms, and they're beautiful.
The good kind.
The good kind, yeah, the good kind, and they are, you know, more and more aware of the ecology and aware. People want to have a healthy environment. People want to be surrounded by things that are local, and it's like enough work, but not too much work for the artisans, so they can, you know, it's a way to start to.
But we try
Creating experience, yeah.
No, we also try to educate the customer that if they want these type of things, they also need to wait, and there's time that it needs to be considered, and we try to tell them, okay, if you want this type of rugs, we have to enter in the process of interior architecture since the beginning, because it's a long process, and sometimes they want an ecological hotel, but then they call you 2 weeks before and say, okay, please furnish all the.
Yes. If you're talking about a consumer experience from being marketing product background, like if you get someone really excited about it, they will wait.
Yes.
So if it's like, you know, taking a course on how you do weaving and seeing the whole process, and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, and now I can customize my own rug and I get to have it in 3 months. That's amazing. Yeah. So experiences, I think, can create that a little bit more of that value and wanting to wait.
Yeah, putting your hands on the loom, putting your hands in the
Yeah,
yarn, actually trying things out and understanding in your own physical body what that means. And then that's having empathy, you know, it's having empathy with the weaver or with the embroiderer.
Yeah, it's connecting you to the product because, you know, these products have a soul. And so
exactly. Exactly.
But maybe again, this I think this approach works well with people from 40s and maybe 30s, but younger people, they still don't need to relax, they don't look for therapy, so they will not look to weaving. They at least they will not feel attracted to weaving by that way. And I think to achieve, to communicate with those younger people, design, it's a much stronger way, because it's something that they look for. Design to become healthy, maybe those kind of relationships, looking to small villages, maybe looking for the health, because young people are very focused on the body, not only to dress, but also to have a healthy body. So maybe, and as this rural ambience, it's really a good experience also to have in life. And so maybe it's interesting to provoke to have the experience, to travel and go to experience. And this, I think, will work in both ways. People to go and enjoy nature, and also people who is focused on art crafting to go and see fairs, see design atelier. I don't know if I have the right word. So I think putting both sides to go and experience the other one, it provokes really the interpretation and the reflection about how to change and to evolve.
Goes into this idea of sustainability and cycles, and how we can look, in order for us to actually change the way we're living, we have to look at these cycles. And so if we're looking at the cycle from the plant all the way to the fiber, all the way to the textile, and then we're looking at the cycles of what's happening in fast fashion right now, and what Nicole was showing in her presentation, and the truckloads and truckloads of waste, which I know 20-year-olds, like my nieces and nephews, are terrified. You know, they all have anxiety over this, and they don't know what to do. So I sat down with my niece and I explained to her, okay, this is like, if you find linen and you can wear the linen and it'll get softer and it'll last longer and you can have it for many years. And so now she's looking for used linen, you know, so then people start to look at the textile industry differently when they can start to understand the textile, and when they see that it comes from a plant or they see it comes from an animal, and they want to be closer to that. And they also don't want all the VOCs. You know, so this is, yeah, I completely agree that, and even taking really young children on these experiences to understand textile in a different way is important.
Mm-hmm.
So
and shopping in a different way, that will be very powerful. Learn to shop, to look at the clothing, at the labels. I think.
In the labels that we've been doing, we always show the time that everything takes, you know, like so that people can actually understand what goes into it and where the materials come from. So we've talked sort of about social sustainability in terms of what we can do and what initiatives we need to do to keep the crafts alive in a sustainable way, and then also the environmental sustainability and the economic sustainability. So we're focusing on all three of those.
May I say, may I say just a word of hope?
Absolutely.
No, it is in the last 23 of April, the President of the European Commission proposed a very nice idea, and I like nice ideas. It was what she called the new Bauhaus.
Yeah.
It was based in three words, three concepts, if you want: beautiful, together, sustainable. So this is my hope for the future, and especially in textile industry, what we are talking about. Yeah, this is a word of hope. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the living future, they also incorporate beauty. And it's such a, beauty can be so many different things to so many different people. So it's like, how can we define that, but how can we also, and we've been thinking about that a lot with artisans also, instead of, you know, it's like, okay, there's problems and there's issues and there's solutions we need to come up with, but there's also an element of taking time and celebrating and honoring. And then if you do that, all of a sudden everything starts working. It's really, we've been putting that into practice, and it's really spending time on that and spending time with the people and giving this value through our experiences is so important. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add, or any ideas or questions for each other? No? Rita, do you have anything?
I was really, I liked very much these talking about this new Bauhaus, because indeed textiles have been so powerful to bring us beauty and to make us learning how beautiful we want to be, because we use them in our home. We dress them every day. So we have really to be able to go deeper and look to the product and understand everybody, understand how much time it took to really value it. Mm-hmm.
My Rita. We'll come visit you soon. We're gonna come up there for sure.
I hope.
Yeah, I think all of us. Yeah, I can't wait to.
I do hope.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Well, thank you everybody so much.
Thank you.
I hope this is the beginning of a deep collaboration. I have a feeling that it is. And we'd like to thank so much the Third Floor team and the Creative Wear team and also the TLBC team. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.